The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to Sister Speak. You're here with me, Mariam. Also joined in the studio with me is
Sonia.
And today we'll be talking about bullying. But before we do that, can you tell us, Sonia, what our show is about?
Yeah, sure. So our show is a platform for young girls to voice their own opinions on current events and issues and form discussions on general topics such as religion, culture, politics, social media, etc. Please note all opinions/views are our own, and we respect all other or opposing similar views/opinions.
And if they want to join in the discussion, how can they do that?
Well, they can WhatsApp us on 07779 481822, and we are also on Facebook Live, and we are on Instagram. That's at Sister Speak. You can comment or you can DM us.
Absolutely. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. Before we delve into today's discussion on bullying, you want to just acknowledge that this topic may be sensitive and could potentially bring up difficult emotions. So if you or someone is struggling with bullying, please remember that help is available. So you can reach out to the National Bullying Helpline, which is at 0808 800 222 for support and guidance. But before we actually delve into that, we will do our segment Thought of the Week, which is a segment where we just share something insightful and personal anecdote or something that we've just been thinking about.
Okay, so I'm guessing I have to go first.
I don't have much options.
Okay. Yeah, so my thought of the week, I think, is this is such a weird one, but it's like try to, what's the word? So it's like stick up for yourself a lot. I guess this links into our bullying topic,
passionate.
Right? But it's like stand your ground. If you know, like, I don't mean like, you know, if you're wrong, and don't be adamant about things and situations where you shouldn't be, but just, you know, have some more belief and faith in yourself. And like, again, for me, a lot of the thought of the weeks come from transitioning into becoming an adult now, because I feel like that's the period of life that I'm in. And a lot of the times it's like when you're a child, you can just kind of like nothing really matters and things can just be avoided, or you can just be childish about a situation because no one's going to hold you accountable. But as you get older, you know, you say things and do things for a reason. So if you ever get called up on it, or if you're having to reflect on it, just like you stand your ground, like you did that for that reason, and just stay strong. So, yeah.
That's a really important thought of the week, and actually something that I've been thinking about as well recently. But do you think that having the ability and the capacity to stand your ground, as you say, derives from a place of good self-esteem and confidence, which a lot of people may not have? And if they lack that, how can they build that and develop it?
Well, I wouldn't say I have it either. Like, I still
really?
I still think sometimes it can be hard because, you know, it's just a lot of responsibility to stand your own ground.
I think you come across, sorry to interrupt, I think you come across as very confident and someone that will be unapologetic and stand for what's wrong.
No. You just can't, you never know. Like, there's not some situations where I feel like I'm a mouse, like I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to talk. It just depends on the situation. Like, for example, I went to like this rally the other day, and I went by myself because I was meeting friends later on, but I was traveling by myself. And at one point I was wearing something very visibly to show what side of the rally I'm on, if you want to say it like that. Not that there's sides or anything, but it's just
to show solidarity.
There are perceptions of people may think,
sure,
what are you doing here? Like, and I had that visibly shown, and at some points I was like, I kind of want to be covered right now. Like, I don't want to, when I was traveling, because I was on my own, and just a moment where I was like, momentary lapse, I guess you could say, where I was never like against it, but it's just a bit worried or scared, because you do get worried and scared because there are people out there that are nasty and horrible and, you know, will attack you. So it was a momentary lapse, but I was like, should I just cover my very visible signs right now?
I don't think that's your lack of capacity to stand your ground. I think that's just for you being risk aware, aware of the risk that is around you, and you know that you don't want to be subjected to hate crime, or you don't want to be subjected to violence if that could sprout. But But I don't necessarily think that you should come to the conclusion that you're not able to stand your ground. In fact, you're going to a rally to show solidarity, and the whole essence of your travel was for that.
Yeah. So back to your initial question of what would you say to people that don't know how to stand their ground or whatever, I would say use honesty as a big tool, because if you're honest about what you want and why you're doing what you do, then you've got all the power you need, because it's about what you believe, right? Like, you're doing it for yourself, whatever you're standing your ground on. Mm-hmm. Just be honest, because when you start derailing and maybe making things up or trying to find excuses and so on, that's when it's like, you look weak to me now. Like, you don't even believe in your own cause, forget someone else. But if you stand your ground, you be honest, you be like truthful, and use that to help you.
I think so as well. I think that shows and demonstrates your integrity, especially if you're going to use honesty. And why wouldn't you want to be honest about your situation? Because there is no need to be inaccurate or just to say mistruths. I think that kind of interlinks with my thought of the week, which is something that I generally have been thinking about. It's about having a good relationship with yourself. I think we always think about cultivating positive relationships with others, and I think that's important, but equally I've been thinking about how do I think about myself, and do I place more emphasis on my thoughts and that allowing that to define me, or do I put emphasis on my actions? And I think there's sometimes a disparity, because sometimes I could spiral in terms of my thoughts, and it can be sometimes it can be quite self-deprecating. However, my actions are not aligned to that. And so when I'm kind of doing achievements where everyone around me is celebrating me, I'm having self-deprecating thoughts. So this is something that I wanted to kind of distinguish, where how do we identify ourselves, and how do I identify myself in terms of, am I defining myself with maybe past experiences that's having past experience that has kind of defined me, and I haven't moved past it, or am I defining myself in terms of the present and what I've achieved right now? So that's kind of my thought of the week.
That's a really good thought of the week, and I think the whole
self-deprecating, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can probably relate to that, because you just can't help it. Like, you're your own harshest critic, and you always will be. But yeah, having that good relationship with yourself, let's work on it, everyone.
It's really important, because I think there's a lot of images online or allegories that I shared that if you are not a full cup, you can't point to someone else. So it's so important to fill your own cup and to be positive to yourself and have positive thoughts about yourself. And I think that's why we kind of focused our show last week on introspection, because in order for you to do that, you have to evaluate yourself and exercise introspection, which is going to be a good segue for my next question for you, Sonia.
Oh no.
What's the emotion that you find hardest to express?
Oh, that is such an interesting question. Anger, maybe, I think. Or sometimes, I don't know. I actually don't know. That's a really weird question. It used to be like crying and sadness, but now I've really let that out, open the gates for tears of flooding. But now anger, I think also when you like have to be serious sometimes, but it just depends on the situation. I actually honestly don't know. These questions take a lot of time to think about, Mariam, so I don't
That's
know.
the kind of style I like, so
Yeah, should I ask you the question back?
if you like.
So what's the emotion you find hardest to
I
express?
definitely think anger for me. I think anger is something that I feel it overcomes me in terms of it's very heightened and it's very strong and it overpowers me. And it's not elicited in terms of other person will feel the grunt of it. It's more that I've become so disassociated with the situation to the extent that I just start crying, because I'm so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
As opposed to be expressing my anger that this is something that's made me uncomfortable. I can't articulate it at that moment. It really does just numb me.
Yeah, and that must be annoying, because it's like this is the time when you want to articulate and express what you're feeling, but you can't. Yeah.
Absolutely, it's very paralyzing, and then just taking a moment in that situation. But sometimes it's really difficult, because sometimes I feel like, especially it depends who I'm interacting with, it feels that if I do take a moment, it really does rely on the other person to be able to understand that I don't want to say something that I regret.
Yeah.
So I'd rather be quiet and then express what I need to But oftentimes it requires two people to be healthy. So if the other person is not receiving that and just wants to pretend that the situation did not occur, it's very difficult to have that communication. So I think for me is understanding that I only have control over myself and my thoughts and my feelings. And if I feel uncomfortable, I should be able to articulate it. But it is contingent on the other person. But I don't allow that to define it, the situation. Or if that person receives my communication, that's completely fine. And if they don't, that's completely fine too.
Good answer, Mariam. And I like, again, I'm lost. I need light-hearted questions and like.
Okay, what's your cheat meal?
Cheat meal. First of all, I don't even believe in that phrase because every meal I have is a cheat meal. Like, I don't think about meals like that. Or like the ultimate cheat meal. Isn't that wings and chips? Isn't that what it would be?
I don't have cheat meals either, but it's like one of the questions.
Yeah, but like it means obviously like when you're
something that you
unhealthy, and
unhealthy,
veering out of the balanced diet. So
okay, I have a question for you, another one that's a bit more deep.
You don't want to answer the same question though.
I don't really have. I think the same for me is just anything greasy. But I really like eating greasy food with salad.
Alright, okay, to balance it out.
To just like, I like the freshness that cuts through the grease. It actually tastes nice for me.
Nice.
So I think you've been seen when I go out to eat, I tend to order salad, even if it's really greasy. I just like to have a salad.
I love salad too, though. I can't lie. Every meal, if it's nice when there's a little salad on the side, you know.
Yeah.
Even recently, I got a biryani from someplace, and it was just the rice and the chicken, and I was like, that looks a bit plain. It looks like there's salad missing or something on the side, you know. Then we got raita, and it was okay.
Oh,
yeah, it's good.
That's good. Okay. Reining it back in, though, I wanted to ask you a question. This is something that specifically I really wanted to ask you, actually. If you could give me a piece of advice on anything, what would it be?
No. I always say, don't come to me for advice. Okay, you can come to me for advice, but I want to say this.
Specific to me?
Yeah, specific to you. Okay, fine. If I had to give you advice on something, well, like anything.
Anything. It's very ambiguous.
That's so weird. It's gonna sound so cliche, and you're probably gonna be like, that doesn't even address to me. But I would say like, keep going and doing what you're doing. And again, I don't want to sound cliche about it. The reason why I'm saying it is because look at how far you have come, and look at what you can achieve, and remember what you can achieve. If you have to reflect, you know, and just keep going, because there's going to be people that don't understand you. There's going to be people that are like, you know, looking down on you. Maybe there's always going to be that, right? Because the company, you yourself, like you said, might doubt yourself and self-depreciate and so on, but just keep going, because you are doing everything you ever wanted to do and dreamed of doing. So yeah, just keep going.
I love that. I think that's extremely relevant to me, because sometimes it does feel like I'm stagnant, but I should remember there's so much things that I dreamed of and I was able to achieve it. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Well, let me ask you the next question. It's similar, but instead of past to present, it's future. So, finish the sentence. When I am double my age, I would like to be
a mother.
Oh, that's so cute. What's double your age?
Can we not share my age?
Oh, but then can you give a different answer?
Double my age. I think I'd like to be content.
Oh,
I'd like to be.
Are you content now?
I think I'm working towards it. I'm becoming more content as I'm growing older. And I think I mentioned the last show, I feel like life has really humbled me, and I think that's a constant process. And I feel like when I go through certain tribulations or hardships, at that moment I understand it's a hardship, I understand it's a tribulation, but I have a foresight understanding that I really believe that there will be some ease, because Allah says with hardship is ease. And although it might not happen immediately, I just have that hope. I have that conviction it's going to happen, and that's exactly what's happened in the last 2 weeks. Today I felt like I had so much clarity, when in the last 2 weeks my mind was very fogged and I really couldn't think about certain things that I'm trying to go through. So I definitely think when I'm twice the age, I hope that contentment and that clarity will come a lot easier with me with life experience.
Wow, that is a great answer, and I think you will be content.
Inshallah.
I think you'll be content next week, Mariam. Inshallah. Good one. Do you want me to answer it? I would just say, when I am double my age, I would like to be healthy and free but mainly healthy.
Should I unpack that?
Huh?
No, unpack it.
No, I just think because like when I'm double my age, the people I see of that age, and I'm talking about family members and so on, often it's like there's so many ailments and there's this problem and this problem and this problem, and it's gonna happen to all of us anyway. But we like to just be healthy. I think that's a really big aim for the future.
But
and now as well, obviously. Yeah.
But in order for you to be healthy and double your age, you have to start introducing habits now.
It's just long, isn't it? Like, but once it's a habit, I know you won't think about it anymore. It's part of your routine. I know. That's what I'm trying to get to. But I agree with you. It's stuff that we need to implement now for then.
It just reminds me of our last presenter, Amina, who every thought of the week she just used to say, dehydrate yourself, have an orange, and have an orange, or have some sort of fruit.
Yeah, she did say that, yeah. She knew what she was doing. That one fruit a week, at least, was going towards health as well.
I hope she's doing this. I wonder, we should catch up with her.
Amina, shout out to Amina. And all our ex-presenters, we miss you. Come back. Oh, God. Moving on to the next question from Mariam.
From me?
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is quite relevant for the things that we've been discussing. What was a point in your life when you start to believe in yourself?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I would. There's always, like we said, momentary lapses. Like there's always parts of my life and times when I don't believe in myself. But in terms of believing in myself, I think school. Actually, I've said this story before on the radio. Okay, this wasn't it, but this is a big part. When I was 5 years old, I won a competition in the whole of Luton for colouring.
I remember the story.
And I was 5, so it was such a big deal. And I got an Easter egg that was the size of me. Like, that doesn't make me believe in myself, then I don't know what would.
That is such a cool memory.
I know. Winning competitions really did help me in life. I'm not saying they were, like, come on, what, like, and they probably just gave it to me because I was little. Like, it was a scribble. But it was a good
Did
memory.
you keep that paper?
No, I didn't even eat the egg because at the time I remember saying, I don't like orange chocolate. But I actually love orange chocolate now. I know, regrets.
But the happier memory that came from it.
That stayed with me.
Do you think that's been, after that moment, I assume that had a big impact in your life, do you think it just grew? Or is it something, do you think that was like the start of it?
I think it's a bit like, yeah, it grew, but I'm obviously as you get older you stop looking for external validations. Like if I lost that competition, shouldn't mean I should stop believing in myself as well. So I think after school, because school is just pure just validation, get that exam result, smashed it, yeah, you're doing well, or competition, win that tournament, you're doing well. And as soon as that stuff, if you lose, it can be detrimental as well. So when you're out of that environment, say sixth form, college, whatever you go to, if you're 17, 18, and then after that you realize actually I need to be believing myself from other ways, not because a teacher told me that I'm doing well. Like there needs to be other ways to believe in yourself. So I think after school is when it became more real, but before that it was more just, well done, you got an A, you got an A star. So yeah,
I think you're absolutely right on that point in terms of we use extrinsic validation to define ourselves, and those things often happen in schools. I think self-worth isn't taught in other ways, and that's something that you have to almost develop on your own, especially when you go to university, because you almost plunge into an area where you have autonomy on yourself, and you're almost competing with so many other people in terms of just the kind of social circles that you're in, making friends, even if you're engaging with certain activities, you're on your own, and you are the one that's going to be responsible for making those opportunities come to yourself. And I think something I really struggled with, but I do think it's because I had company that wasn't too great in terms of they would kind of belittle me and berate me, and I think that really knocked a lot of my confidence, and that was quite consistent throughout my whole entire schooling life, which is quite sad. But I'm addressing it. I think it's important. I don't feel like it's a shameful thing to say to go to therapy. I think it's very important. As I digress, going back to my main point, I think the moment for me was when I had no one around me after university, because I had to cut out very toxic people out of my life, and I was almost in a clean state. and I started to engage with the organization called Femiso. And on that moment, that's when my confidence really uplifted, because I met people that aligned with me in terms of my values, aligned with my passions and advocacy, and that were really empathetic, and that's something that's really important to me in terms of emotional intelligence. And I think from that moment, that was really, really a good opportunity for me to develop myself. And then the other opportunities I had that year, where I was part of a political organization. Well, it was a non-partisan organization, but it had a lot of political engagement. And I think meeting those type of people, and I met people from a very wide range of spectrum, in terms of meeting like ministers and meeting people who are working in like corporate companies. I think that really sprouted my confidence. So that year I really kind of focused on development, and I think that really kind of become the cornerstone of my confidence, and I'm still building on that.
Well done, Mariam.
Do you have any final thoughts before we get to the next half of the show?
No, just listen in, because we're going to be speaking about bullying, and that's a very, very important topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be talking about bullying, and we do hope that you can engage in the discussion. So see you in the next half. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Ya hala, ya hala, ya hala.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to Sisters Speak. On the first half we were sharing our reflections, and in this half we'll be talking about bullying. Just a disclaimer, before we delve into the discussion on bullying, we want to acknowledge that this topic may be sensitive and could potentially bring up difficult emotions. So if you or someone that you know is struggling with bullying or its aftermath, please know that help is available. You can call the National Bullying Helpline at 0808 800 222 for support and guidance. So the first question I'd like to ask Assam is, what is the current state of bullying awareness and prevention efforts in the UK, and what more can be done to address this issue? So just for those who don't know, this week from the November the 13th to November the 17th is Anti-Bullying Week, and this is why we kind of dedicated our show. So the floor is yours, Assam.
Well, I think the current state of sort of bullying prevention and awareness is I'd say it's a lot better now than it was maybe when me and you were in school, without giving away our ages too much. But I think it is getting better, to be honest. I mean, I don't have sort of the facts or figures in front of me, but I think just based on what I see, I think the fact that we even have a bullying awareness week at the minute, and obviously Inspire FM, if you've been listening to the radio, we have been talking about anti-bullying on the radio all week this week as well, to coincide with the National Anti-Bullying week. So I do think it's a good improvement in what we're seeing, to be honest. Without sort of going into the schools and stuff, you can't necessarily know for sure, but I think there's definitely is some sort of awareness being built.
I do think I definitely agree with you. I think there is a more of a emphasis in terms of bullying, and I think now it's a bit more nuanced to understand the demographics and how they experience bullying. But I do want to ask you, what more can be done in terms of addressing these issues, because sometimes there's covert bullying that may be unrecognized or undetected. So what would you say about that?
I'd say really, I mean, it depends on the kind of bullying that's happening. I think one of the things, coming back to your question where you say obviously there's covert bullying, there's overt bullying, what different types of bullying are there? Cyberbullying now is a lot different to what cyberbullying was 10 years ago, and maybe 15 years ago even. The internet's developed so much in that. So I think there is no one glove fits all kind of approach when it comes to how we can tackle bullying. But I think the main thing is providing a space for people to feel that they can share their experiences, how they're feeling, and then sort of the specifics kind of come after that, I think. But I think people need to be aware what bullying is, what constitutes bullying. Is it just playful teasing, or is it something more serious than that? Is it making you feel a certain way? And then sort of moving beyond that to the specifics of it, and then tackling it from that angle.
I think that's absolutely right. And do you think there's a difference between the bullying that we see in schools and in the workplace, or do you think they could derive from the same kind of manifestations? And do you think the way people address it in both areas, of course children are vulnerable, and so you would expect the guardian to intervene for them, Do you think those mechanisms are consistent in terms of people being able to have someone that can intervene and support them?
I think the difference between maybe school-based bullying and maybe bullying in the workplace, or bullying between adults and stuff, is that as an adult, I feel like, I mean, I can't really speak from experience. I've been quite fortunate, but I feel like as an adult, a lot of the things that you see maybe online or from other people's experiences is that a lot of it is basically just you're grown up, kind of just stick it out kind of thing, toughen up. Whereas with children, obviously, there is more support in that sense, and there should be, I think. But yeah, I think there definitely is a difference. But I feel like from what I've seen, I feel like people who bully from when they were maybe teenagers or young people, for example, I feel like they can, in some ways, I feel like it's the same people that maybe continue to be bullies in adult life. Maybe that's a generalization, but basically just from what I've seen.
Okay, from your experience, do you think the indicators are very different when a child child is being bullied? So, and this is also from Brighton Home and Safeguarding Children Partnership, who say that if children are being afraid to go to school, they're skipping school, mysteriously being ill, or doing less well at school, those are kind of indicators. But what would you say are the indicators when it comes to adults in the workplace? And how can we kind of ascertain that someone is being harassed or being bullied? Sonia, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you for welcoming. I'm back. Yeah. And hi, Asim. Thanks for being on the show.
No, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, just to join in on, like you said, in the workplace, what kind of signifiers there might be there. I would say lack of motivation to do your work, and little things like starting to come in late to work or taking extra long lunches, maybe. Just a general lack of enthusiasm for doing the work. So basically a change in behaviour from what you had before, because obviously it's not a place you want to be in anymore, so you're not going to have that same enthusiasm towards work.
I think
I 100% agree.
Do you think in terms of when people are being bullied in the workplace, as colleagues, what kind of position does that put people in? And do you think if you were able to recognise someone is being bullied, what would the approach be? And do you think it's easy for colleagues to be allies to people that are being bullied?
I think it's very hard, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, honestly, I think it depends on the workplace, but I think office politics are such a huge thing when it comes to things like this.
Because you need your work, you need your employment most of the time. It's not something that you can just play around with, or
exactly.
You can't. It's not like school, like there's examples we gave before. Like, you can't just jump in and be like, I'll use my name and say this and so on. You're like, actually, you might have a family or a mortgage at home to provide for. So I think if you are, I don't know, if you feel like it's something that has to be called out, yes, by all means, join the forces, but try and do things. It sounds wrong, but try and do things that protect yourself as well. So things that are written, not just said. Everything has to be done properly and with formalities. What do you think?
No, I 100% agree with you in that sense.
I think one of the challenges when people are being confronted with bullying, especially when it comes to through supporting a colleague, it's having that understanding of what the policy is in the workplace and understanding how they could be protected. I can understand the apprehension as well, because sometimes it's very difficult to report someone is being bullied, especially if it's not tangible. It is often seen as not tangible because it's almost hearsay. Someone has said this and it's not documented, but it's really important in that space to be an ally, because there's strength in numbers. And I think one of the things that I've been thinking about is if someone has come to seek your help, I think as a Muslim, I just feel like it's very difficult to close the door. And if there's any way you can help, it doesn't necessarily be the way that they're asking for, but within whatever your capacity is, even if it's emotional support, I think it's really important and it's incumbent on you to support them. But also I think it's really, when you go to the workplace, you should be very aware of policies, because that will allow you to protect yourself and understand what these processes that you're going through, if they're accurate and if they're being imposed on you in a way that's not fair, you'll have that understanding. And it's unfair because you wouldn't want to go to a workplace just to catch someone out. However, it's just very important to find out what the rules and regulations are, just to ensure that you're protected and the people around you are protected. Another thing is just to ensure that if something is uncomfortable, to make sure that everything is written and then there's evidence for you to be able to kind of raise that in the future. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
No, the written thing, I stand by again. Just things have to be done properly, and if that means an email trail, then
100%. I think also looking for mental health champions within the workplace is very important, to kind of go to them and to speak to them in confidence. I think that's really important. And I think when all those type of things should be given to you when you're inducted in any kind of workplace. But I think those kind of my thoughts in terms of how to kind of navigate bullying in the workplace. It's a very awful thing to experience, and I think that's why it's important to, when you do start a work, to branch out and to make sure that you make friends within, not just within your own team, but with other teams as well, so you can actually discern whether your treatment is fair. It's an unfortunate kind of strategy that I had to employ, but I think a lot of the times, especially when you're very young, you may not be aware how different dynamics are. So that's one of the strategies that I have often used to be able to make sure that I feel safe and comfortable in the workplace. And no one should be feeling that they're going to be harassed or being bullied or they're uncomfortable. Your workplace should be a safe space for you, and your workplace should be cultivating conditions for you to thrive, because you are delivering work and you're doing deliverables. So that's kind of like my own advice to people. But moving on to the next question, I do think bullying has evolved, especially as Asim said, with technology. So my next kind of question is, how has cyberbullying impacted individuals, especially with young people, and what measures can be taken to combat that? I want to start with Sonia, because she's someone in the social media space quite.
Oh, but I'm old. So when I was young,
Not that old.
No, but I'm not in the social media. Bullying was still kind of new. We used to have like this joke, which is like, if you're getting bullied, just turn the screen off. Which wouldn't even make sense to kids now, because they'd be like, the phone screen? Well, I meant like the computer screen, like you just turn it off, or the laptop, just turn it off. Which is obviously...
That's actually a very good advice.
I know, but it's more serious than that. So sorry, I didn't mean to offend anyone, because the truth is, if you go back to school the next day, everyone's going to be talking about whatever it is anyway. You can't just turn it off when they're next to you in class saying, did you see that thing that was said about so-and-so online yesterday? So it's not something we can just ignore and avoid. But yeah, I guess this topic in general it's a sticky one, and it's also very prominent right now. I'd say it's sticky only because it's so hard to sometimes prove that someone's bullying you online. So there's a lot of things that exist, like anonymous pages or group chats that can never be found again because they can be deleted, and so I really don't know how kids are bullying each other these days online, but in terms of navigating it and so you have to be careful what you say. You can't end up being the bully or saying something back, because once it's online, it's there forever. Like, the moment someone screenshots it or screen records it or whatever it is, there's no way back out of that. What would you say?
But I don't think that point's hammered in enough to young people. I remember when we would have sort of like citizenship classes and stuff, they would always tell us whatever you say online has a consequence, basically. And obviously, I mean, it's been like 10 years since we left school, but I don't know if younger people are aware of that. I see sort of my younger siblings or maybe people that they're around, and it's very much like, or even like when you're online yourself, you see younger people online and they kind of just feels like they're saying anything, and it's like, ooh.
Because it's just a space for them that's always been there.
Exactly.
It doesn't seem like a new space that, be careful, it's just there. From the minute they're born, it was there. I don't think they see it as this whole, like, I need to be careful.
Because I think we kind of saw it as a privilege almost, really.
Absolutely.
Don't you think? Whereas I feel like we were very strict. We had to be 13 when we made our Facebook accounts or Twitter accounts and stuff. Some people didn't. I'm not gonna name names. But for me personally, like, it was something that was like...
No, you respected the rules at least. Like, you wouldn't show it, for example. So
exactly.
There can be, like, there's people on social media apps that say anything, show anything. I would never want to show my uniform, for example, on a public platform. Like, it would be very private if you did, because that's exposing where you go to school. That's open to all sorts of things in the moment you do that. But now, I mean,
especially with like TikTok and stuff, you see the schools themselves are on TikTok. Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. But I agree with you, because think about it like this: when you're young, you're a teenager or whatever, you have a minute of anger or angst or whatever, you can make a video and put it online, and that's it, done. And that's the kind of things they would do, because that's their outlet, that's their platform. They don't think of anything else. I don't know what we would do. Maybe text your friend individually or call them on the phone, like the landline phone. I want to talk to someone to rant or something. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think they don't have that barrier of, let me not do this thing online, let me not go online. Like, they'll just put anything on there, including bullying.
Exactly.
100%. I think the repercussions of that, I think we can see in so many different ways. And I think it's quite difficult for them to kind of separate the world of technology to their actual lives, because everything seems to be a social thing online. But for me personally, I think education is very important. And so, like Assam mentioned, in citizenship, they were taught that there's a consequence to putting yourself out there. And also, if you think about in the long term, especially when you're in the workplace, sometimes people are weaponized with something that they tweeted when they were 15 years old. And although that's not right, and that it really does happen, so to make sure that you're putting your online footprint has to be you have to be very careful when you make an online footprint. Sonia, go ahead.
Sorry, that kind of reminded me, because you were saying like people bring things up after like 15 years and so on, of how people dox people online. And I can't even imagine for, like, I'm talking about workplace now, but even for young people, imagine you're called out for something, that the entire class can literally join the bandwagon and now start bullying you online as well. Like, it's so much easier to be a bully online now than it was, I think, in real life. And obviously doxing is a whole thing. Do you want to tell the listeners what that is?
My understanding of doxing is when somebody basically leaks your private details. Online, it can be obviously your name, your address, your age, what school you go to, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like it's very easy for people to be able to do that nowadays, because I feel like it comes back to the point we were saying earlier. I feel like we were taught to be very private with our lives when it comes to the online space, whereas I think, again, with young people that are coming up with, they've grown up, Instagram's been around since, before they were born. Exactly. So, I mean, they know that. And so there's no second thoughts when you're posting pictures of yourself in your uniform or, at your workplace and things like that. And then it becomes very easy for people to be like, okay, you work here and you've said something that I don't like, and therefore there's your information out there.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell your employer, and we're going to have like 70 people message your employer. So now employer has no choice but to do something, because they're getting doxed or, inundated with this information. And so it's a bit of both of young people just putting anything online, and it's also the part of doxing and the whole, like, everyone joining on a bandwagon. That's not seen as bad as it should be seen. So, like, okay, say someone done something wrong, or I don't know, a child is getting bullied, like, why is it not seen as bad of leaking someone's information? Like, that should be a really bad thing to say, actually, guys, this person works here. Like, no matter what they've done, and sometimes, I mean, yeah, you do see it and you're like, no, that person's evil, they deserve to get fired or whatever. But at the same time, it's very like, we shouldn't really be doing those investigations.
I think for me personally, I think I have quite a split opinion on that. So I do see why, if someone wrote something very hostile and uncomfortable, say if they wrote hate towards a specific ideology, and I'm working with this person, that would make me feel unsafe. And so therefore I would raise that with the employer, that I don't feel safe to come to the workplace because my fellow colleague is speaking about maybe my religion in this way, or inciting hate. So in that sense, there's a precedence for you to share that, but I think you should go through the protocols that is in place at the workplace, as opposed to sharing it online and creating a whole entire conversation or dialogue or discourse about it. I was going to chime in and just say, obviously, the route that you're saying, obviously, that doesn't constitute doxing. All right, okay, so I didn't even know what doxing was.
So doxing is specifically, you are putting somebody's information out there on the internet. So they've done something that you don't like.
So say that person did do like a hate crime or offensive comment towards you, and then Assam was like, guys, find out where this guy lives.
Yeah.
Let's, I don't know, send nasty letters to his address or block his front garden door or something. Exactly. And everyone would just join in.
But can you report that to the police?
No, people don't get in trouble for doxing. Well, as far as I know, they don't. This is what I mean. So it's about, is that a bully? Are you dealing with a bully? Or have you become the bully now?
Yeah, I think that there's a distinction to be made there.
Yeah, but it's the same thing if that person then, if Assam leaked their employment details, that could jeopardize your kind of case. Because you could be like, I'm dealing with it in my way, but because all these people have now done all of this, you're actually leaking his private information, their private information online, and it's just jeopardized the whole thing,
That's terrible. I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I did come to mind, how we were talking about, it was very separate spheres in terms of we kept our lives very private, and the public sphere was something that was kept online. And I was thinking about how those, like you just mentioned, in terms of doxing, in terms of getting their location, in terms of their address and all of those type of things. I think children, young people, like you mentioned earlier, they post when their birthday is, they post where they live, they post what school they go to. It's very easy to collate this information, and I don't think people emphasize this enough to young people at school, that this information can be used in a very negative and maybe even callous way.
I mean, I don't want to I was going to say like say someone's name, but like I know a younger person and their like usernames are random numbers. What those random numbers are, their date of birth. And I just thought, you given your date of birth, we know where you live because you've made it very obvious, like the town, the city, and so on. You can get into someone's banking app. Okay, this is very serious stuff. You know their first pet name, you know their first school name. There's only a few more things you need to know until in that app. So you have to be really, really careful. Sorry, I know we were talking about bullying and we've gotten into this, but it's about
I think it's really important because
online,
putting your information online can make you subject to bullying, I think.
Yes,
It can do.
it can.
But moving on to my next question, I wanted to ask about the demographic in terms of bullying. So do you think there's specific demographics or groups that are more vulnerable to bullying, and do you think there should be more targeted interventions in place?
I don't believe there's any demographic type thing when it comes to bullying, and we're talking about school bullying here because that's what comes to mind when you think of bullying. And I'm going to say this is such a bad phrase, but anyone can get it, and anyone can get it. It's true. Bullies are just bad, I don't know what to say. I was going to say they're bad people, but people can redeem themselves. But you know what I mean. In that moment, that bully is just a bad person. It's just a really bad, nasty person. What do you think about the demographic thing? Are there people that are more vulnerable?
I agree with you. I think there definitely are people that are more vulnerable. I think we sort of see it more in protected groups. I mean, you can be bullied on account of your race, if you have a disability, things like that. But I think everyone's susceptible to it, to be honest.
In school, for sure.
In school, no one's safe in school.
That's what I meant. No matter, anyone can get it. Nobody's safe. In terms of vulnerability, I think that is a responsibility for teachers to look out for, though. Because sometimes it was like obvious bullying happening, or they'll say, they're just picking on him or her, or it's just a little friendly banter, and it's like, no, you need to call it out now before it becomes something more serious. And that often does happen, and you're like, how did the teachers or the staff members or anyone just miss this happening? And I'm not saying that often happens, but it's so important for someone to pick it up, I think, personally.
I think it's hard for us to speak on it when
we're old.
We're not in school.
Hard. It's very hard.
I think it'd be great to have a teacher on to speak about this topic, or maybe even some younger people who are still currently in school who could speak about their experience and maybe what they see. But I think from our perspective, it is more about. I think we're aware of the fact that this is endemic now. It's something that it's been around when we were in school. It was around before we were in school. It's around after we were in school. But now I think as adults we're more looking at it as, how can we prevent this? Which I get, it comes back to your point where you're saying, well, if it starts off as picking, then why aren't we picking that up at the initial stages when we can see it happening? Why do we have to wait for it to become a big thing to then finally take action?
I agree with everything Austin said, especially the fact that we're a bit out of touch to talk about school.
There's one interesting thing that's published on Department for Education where people who have free school meals are less likely to report bullying than their counterparts. What are your thoughts on that? I think that's quite an interesting variable to talk about, because those intersectionalities occur in schools, especially if someone comes from a low socioeconomic background. They may be bullied for various reasons. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's something that hasn't really changed since we were in school. I think if you open up and say, okay, I'm being bullied, then the question is then, what are you being bullied for? And then there's a certain level of, you have to admit, okay, I'm being bullied because, I'm in, sort of a lower socioeconomic background. And then I think for some people that tends to be a source of shame. And obviously it shouldn't be the case. But unfortunately, I feel like that's what we see, and so I think there is reluctance because of that to admit it, because it's something that I think if it's something that you yourself are ashamed of, then I think in your head you kind of justify it. Okay, I don't like myself for this, so it makes sense that other people don't like me for this. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. And it's
Yeah.
also very sad that anyone has to feel that way. That's what bullying does to someone, right? It just makes you feel rubbish, and then you don't want to report it, like Asim said, because you think, well, maybe it is true, maybe it's something I need to not talk about,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to talk about it. I think another reason, maybe, and this is just an idea, could be that students might feel like it's just something they have to accept, which is so wrong. But it's just something they have to accept. They're like, you know what, I'm here, I'm just getting by, I just need to carry on, put my head down and continue. And those students that maybe are bullying, they could probably feel a bit more entitled. I don't know, maybe they feel like they're in a position of privilege. Sometimes kids can see these things, which is why I'm a strong advocate for wearing school uniform, by the way, very strong advocate. But I think schools should be, it's education, isn't it? Because as soon as you, as a child, because you can learn so much as a child, you're not actually stupid, like, I mean, we all were there, like, the things that you know and learn, and you can know that actually that means nothing, like, whether their socioeconomic background is, that's not something that should define their worth or of a person, but it's all about teaching.
But often it does in those kind of settings, and then their self-esteem is impacted.
So bad.
And I also think one of the barriers could be that their parents might be in full-time jobs where they don't even get to speak to their parents, and they don't have the capacity to come and actually have those discussions with parents. And then there's this power dynamics. If they do report it, they're going to be infringed in that kind of setting. So,
but the problem is that kids will listen to kids. That it doesn't matter what a teacher or parent says, what another child is saying, or the cool group is saying, or the friendship group that you really want to be in is saying. That's what you're going to listen to. Those are the influences that matter to you the most.
I think we always want to be sort of acknowledged and accepted by our peers rather than everyone else. I think that's the biggest thing. I think, you know, we would rather accept what our friends say rather than, you know, for example, what our teachers say or what our professors say, because we're on the same level, we're equals in that sense. So yeah, I agree with what someone was saying.
Yeah, I think, and then if you watch, like, obviously teenage, I don't know, movies and stuff, and it's often that there is a group that's more powerful than other groups because they're cooler, and I don't know where that cooler comes from. When you watch it on media, it's always they have more money maybe, and they're maybe more smart.
I think those really are important points, but we are coming to the end of the show, and I think we should discuss in the next show.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.